What's up, everybody? Welcome to Podcast Now. I'm Alex. In this video, I want to talk about the future of the God of War franchise. Now that Valhalla is out, the ending is out, and we can all discuss it and discuss, again, what's next for the franchise. And I gotta be honest, I almost think Valhalla complicates things just a little bit. I think a lot of what we talked about once Ragnarok had released, last year, I think a lot of that still holds weight, but I think it's been a little changed, slightly changed with Valhalla. So the way I see it, you still have, in a lot of the same ways that you did a year ago, you still have some paths to choose from. So one path is still doing that Atreus spin-off game, and I want to hold strong to, when I say spin-off, I guess I mean kind of a smaller size thing, a Miles Morales type game, okay? Now, I said that a year ago. I would still say the same thing now. I still don't, and this is not like something against, a huge slight against him. I truly do not know if Atreus would massively sell. If you made a literal God of War, and you have to keep calling it that, we'll discuss, again, the complication there in a second, but I do think you still call it God of War, and then whatever the subtitle is, right? And if it's just Atreus leading it, and it's literally just Atreus, I truly do not know how that would do. Now, my gut reaction would be, I think it would do fine, but I don't know if it would do incredible. I really do think, like it or not, and for better or worse, I think Kratos is still the franchise. So when I bring up, an Atreus spin-off game, I still think the size of a Miles Morales does make sense. And to be honest with you, I still think that is the move that they make. With the Valhalla DLC, I think it complicates it a little bit because it's like, oh man, that probably took a lot of work, right? Like, that was free DLC. It obviously shook the internet. A lot of us can't believe Sony would actually not charge for something like that. And it comes out, a year later. So, okay, well, what do you do now? Well, I still think you make the next big God of War game, right? Now, that takes 4, 5, 6 years. Well, what do you do in the meantime? Well, if you have a smaller team that maybe works on an Atreus game, you can get that thing out in, say, 2 or so years. You can have a bridge, right? You have a God of War game, but it's not, the full size. You have that in 2 years. It's Atreus. It moves the story forward. And then 3 years later, 2 years later, 5 years, whatever it might be. I don't actually think it would be 5 more years after that. But whatever the time would be after that, you have the next God of War game. And it would be whether you just want it to be Kratos again, which I don't really know if they would do that. I think it would be, again, Kratos and Atreus, okay? So that, in a long way, that's really what I would do. And I still think that stands strong. Now, there's 2 different parts to this, right? Valhalla comes out, and one of its writers that was making the rounds right on Twitter and just on social media, so the tweet was, you really think the credits are the end of the story? Come on now, God of War Ragnarok Valhalla. So I'll tell you this, the way I see that specific tweet is it's not the end of Kratos' story. And honestly, I never thought it was. If I believe I saw that tweet before I saw the ending of the game. If I would have done it in reverse, I'll be honest, I still think I would say the same thing. It is definitely an epilogue for his character journey in God of War 2018 and God of War Ragnarok, but I do not see it as the end of Kratos in general, mainly because of just all the stuff, the last like 10, 15 minutes of Ragnarok. I just can't see it being the end of his story. I guess also what I was saying earlier, I think for better or worse, Kratos is still the franchise. You really shouldn't, couldn't, whatever the word might be, have a God of War game without him. So of course you're not gonna, you're not gonna end that. So honestly, I would have said that if I didn't see the tweet from this person, but now that I do, I think that's what it means. You could read into it more, right? And you could say, oh, well, does that mean there's another DLC coming? And maybe you pay for this one, whatever it might be. Maybe there's another one next year or 2, or maybe that spin-off game with Atreus that I keep saying, maybe that's a Kratos one, right? That could very easily happen. So I could see you reading into it like that. Because look, Valhalla does end Kratos in a spot, right? Like, he is now both the God of War and the God of Hope. He's going to unite the realms. He's going to be their leader, all that jazz. And in a way, you can leave it there. And I actually think, and maybe you should, right? You can get into the discussion of, do characters or do franchises kind of last too long, right? Do they overstay their welcome? You could totally argue that and totally argue, yeah, this is actually a good place to leave him because if you keep going, you just, extra chances of messing it up. So I understand that completely. And again, I think it makes sense to leave him where they've left him here, but I just don't think they're going to, right? But again, the way I read that tweet is he'll be back. but it's going to be in the next big game. Don't worry, it's not over. The final thing, I guess, to throw out that I hinted at earlier, and I just said, God of War, but he is now also the God of Hope. And I can't imagine you introduce that in Valhalla to then do nothing within the future, right? So, like, when they refer to him now, I think you're going to have kind of both. You also now have Kratos, in a way, almost permanently changed. Now, I don't know how much changed he is because of Valhalla versus what he already was. I actually made a video on that. I think they kind of double-dipped on the idea of him moving on past his past self, and I don't know if that was, like, the right move. That's my only critique of the Valhalla DLC. But the point is, do you keep calling it God of War? And I think the answer is yes. I absolutely don't think you change the name to God of Hope and then you have a subtitle, or just God of Hope in general. You have to do God of War, because considering he still is the God of War, right? That's important to say. Now, how do they like balance that dynamic with Kratos, where he's literally still kind of him? He's still brutal. He'll still do what needs to be done. He is literally the God of War. But now he's also the God of Hope, and he has to kind of like think from that vantage point as well, right? I mean, that's their problem, honestly. They're going to have to figure out how to balance those two personalities almost in Kratos. But in terms of like the name and what you'll be sold in the future, and that's on our side of things, what we're going to see, it's still got to be God of War, right? So I'm assuming God of War blank. It's a spin-off game. Few years away, it's with Atreus. Then you get a big God of War game, and it reunites Kratos and Atreus. Kratos' story is not over. Again, the other option would be you have another DLC or a spin-off game like I keep pitching for Atreus, but it's just with Kratos again. And you do that in 2 years, and then you do Kratos and Atreus. But just the way they set up Atreus at the end of, and the way they set him up actually in general in Ragnarok, they're going to make something where he's heavily playable, right? So it's like, are we going to have to wait 5-6 years to play as him in his own full game? Or are they going to do kind of a smaller thing like they did with Miles? Not them, right? But just, the industry kind of standard. Would they do that? I think they would do that one. So let me know what you guys think in the comments. Make sure you guys are subscribed to the channel, bell icon turned on. I hope to see you all on the next one.